1 year after the suicide of a 17-year-old student in New Jersey, his school is admitting the many mistakes they made. They say they, quote, fell tragically short of protecting his safety. Jack Reed died on April 30th, 2022 at Lawrenceville, the prestigious boarding school. The school admits that for a year before his suicide, Reed had been a target of bullying and other forms of harassment based on false rumors. The school took the time to investigate the rumors. They found them to be false, but never announced their findings publicly. I'm back now with our panel. We're also joined by Dr. Ken Druck, an expert on resilience and the author of The Real Rules of Life. Lynette, this is incredible on many levels because this school, Lawrenceville, has come forward to admit their mistakes. Often schools don't do that. And so this one, it sounds like it was part of a settlement reached with their parents. Don't know if they would have done this on their own, but nevertheless, they are now saying the many ways in which they failed this student. Here's just part of their statement. Lawrenceville's top priority is the physical, social, and emotional health, safety, and well-being of our students. We recognize that in Jack's case, we fell tragically short of these expectations. They didn't release the findings that it was a false rumor that was circulating to the student body. I mean, that's just, it's unthinkable.
It's disgusting in part because we know that the internet is a real place and that it's a place full of passwords and secret places that kids know about that adults don't know about. And so kids can go to that place and be bullied without any adult knowing what's going on. The fact that they even investigated is I guess, good. But the fact that this kid was at boarding school, you know, there's no parent to protect you there. Your parents aren't there to look through your backpack and check your homework and all that stuff. And
yeah, you rely on the school.
You rely on the school. This kid was alone. And on the internet, he was alone and cornered by his classmates. It's really, really upsetting.
You know, Dr. Druck, we were talking in our show meeting about how back in the day, you know, when we were in school, you could be bullied at school, but then you went home and that was your safe haven. And now because of the internet, there is no safe haven. You're not safe in your room, your dorm room, or at home. So how do you define bullying now?
You know, the first order of business is to tell Bill and Elizabeth Reed that my heart goes out to them and that I love what they're doing to honor their son by stepping forward and calling attention with CNN's help here and our panel's help to what we can do and what we need to understand about what kids are going through and what bullying is today, because it has changed, as you're saying, Alisyn. With the internet, you know, a minute ago we were talking about guns, how guns amplify emotions. You know, an emotion that normally would have been somebody getting very angry, cussing at somebody else, you know, trying to assassinate their character, with a gun in your hand, that's amplified 1,000 times. With the internet as a resource for spreading misinformation, for conspiracy, for false accusation, a child can be devastated, and children are being devastated. And we need to know and think about what do we do about that, besides opening those lines of communication to our kids when they're in a state of despair and giving them at least one safe place to say, I'm in pain.
Yeah. John, I was reading that one of the kind of enhancers of suicidal ideation is public humiliation. Public humiliation can tip somebody into, you know, somebody who's depressed, somebody who's struggling into it. Well, the internet is one big public humiliation cesspool if you're on the receiving end of bullying like this.
Yeah, and especially if you haven't developed a thick skin born of experience. Everything about this story is heartbreaking. But what I think is, and I think the school does, whatever the circumstances were, coming forward, admitting failings, and saying you're going to implement lessons learned. Cold comfort for the parents, but a step forward for the community. I think what's so heartbreaking here is that you've got a kid who on the surface may have seemed like he had it all going for him.
He did, athlete, great student, a leader among other students.
Elected, you know, president of his dormitory, but was falsely accused of sexual assault. That rumor percolated online, and that undercut his confidence apparently consistently. That kind of cruelty, a form of bullying that might not look like bullying does traditionally, but the failure of the school to call out the investigation, to clear his name, That's where part of this tragedy occurs. And it just reminds people, don't judge people by what they seem to be. You know, that line about treat everyone with kindness because everyone is carrying an enormous burden. And then that final reminder, which is, you know, the ultimate tragedy of permanent solutions to temporary problems.
Dr. Druck, so many schools say they have anti-bullying programs. What is that? What is an anti-bullying program? What does that look like? Or what do the best ones or effective ones look like?
You know, it's teaching kids about this thing called status insecurity. How important is status in a child's life? In a teen, it's everything. How they appear, whether they fit in. They're in that bridge time of life between childhood and experimenting, taking that test drive into adult life. And status is everything. But when they look around, what do they see? How long do they have to turn on the television to see somebody assassinating somebody else's character? Yeah. Somebody creating stories about so what's sanctioned in the adult world now filters down. And what does a school do? A school will try to teach kids kindness, but we're teaching kids in preschool. You know, here's the difference between kindness and mean-spiritedness. And yet those things are so pervasive and are so sanctioned that we're fighting a huge battle.
Yeah. Lee, thoughts?
I mean, this is just something that is so tragic that when you look at the numbers, more than half of high school age students have said that they've experienced cyberbullying themselves. A third of them have said they have experienced at least 5 incidents or more. This is a crisis. There's a mental health crisis on top of all of this, and it's amplified by social media. The fact that people are putting information out there that we don't understand about our kids is absolutely unacceptable. The idea, when you read the story about this child, he went home at Christmas time and he said to his father, "Is it ever going to stop? Is it ever going to stop, Dad? Are they ever going to believe that he didn't do it?" And they knew that he didn't, and they didn't clear his name. But this is happening all over the place. This is one story that's getting a lot of attention, thankfully, because of this child's parents, who are really doing a lot of work to make sure that we're all aware. But more needs to be done. There's no excuse for us to allow this to happen to our kids.
We only have a few seconds left. Monte, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, it looks like the school was more interested in protecting itself from the possibility that it may have a rapist as a student than it was about protecting the student once it became clear, per its own investigation, that those allegations were false. And it's just horrifying. I mean, my heart broke reading the story. I cannot imagine what it feels like to be the parents in this situation. And I'm also so glad that when I was in high school, we didn't have so many of these social media applications to help further disseminate these lies. I mean, the kids are going through a lot right now in the high school and elementary school context. And I just think stuff like that just makes it easier for people to get bullied.
So true. Being a teenager is hard enough. Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Druck. Really appreciate your expertise. And if you or someone you know is having suicidal thoughts or feelings of hopelessness, please call the number on your screen, 988. That's all you have to call. The Lifeline provides 24-hour free and confidential support. You can also text chat at 988-lifeline.org.